Good evening. I would like to call tonight's meeting of the Tacoma Park City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Searcy.
Here.
Councilmember Fulcher.
Present.
Councilmember Dabala
Present.
is here. Councilmember Gibson.
Here.
Councilmember Siemens
He's been seen.
Here. I
He
think he went to
is
get
here
something to
somewhere.
drink. Yeah.
Councilmember Honzak.
Present.
Councilmember Small.
Rock Cullen.
Excellent. Well, this evening, first, I want to welcome our new city manager, Mr. Robert Spirito. After 3 days, it's your first opportunity to join a city council meeting, so we're excited to have you here today. Also want to welcome back Mr. Eubanks. Back in full effect, so we're excited to have our full crew back and healthy to start off tonight's meeting. So just to quickly run through the agenda for tonight. So we will have there are no changes to the agenda. We'll get started with a legislative update, followed by a presentation from MCPS on public schools attended by Tacoma Park residents. That will be about a 60-minute presentation. Then we will have public comments. We have one voting item tonight, and that is the second reading ordinance amending the city code to remove provisions regarding the Nuclear Free Committee. We also have, I apologize, I said one, we have two. We also have a consent agenda, and that is for appointments to committees, resolutions providing for appointments to the Arts and Humanities Committee, appointments to the Board of Elections, appointments to the Commission on Landlord Tenant Affairs, appointments to the Ethics Commission, appointments to the Recreation and Community Engagement Committee, as well as a resolution providing appointments to the Sustainable Maryland Committee. Lastly, we have, those are the public comments items, so just so that folks know what we're voting on tonight. We'll have council comments, city manager comments. I've already gone through our voting session, and then we will have a work session on video camera trailer memorandum of understanding with the Tacoma and Langley Crossroads Development Authority. In terms of upcoming agenda items, on Thursday, January the 25th, the County Council public hearing on the Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment is at 7 p.m., and that's going to be at the Tacoma Park Middle School. We're asking for folks to sign up in advance, and the date for that was today. You had to sign up by the 24th at 5 p.m. in order to testify. Also on Friday, January the 26th, the council will have a council retreat. It will be from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Adele H. Sharp Student Union on the second floor of the University of Maryland, 3972 Campus Drive, College Park. That meeting will be an open meeting.
Mayor, point of order. I just wanted to advise you officially that the Region Forward meeting is at 9 o'clock on Friday. So I'll be attending that. I'll be coming to the retreat afterwards, I guess.
Okay. And Councilmember Small, if you could just let us know what time we can expect you, that would be great. On Wednesday, January the 31st, we will have our council meeting at 7:30. It will start with a legislative update, as well as we'll have a voting session or resolution authorizing the donation of a video camera trailer to the city of Tacoma Park from the Tacoma and Langley Crossroads Development Authority, as well as work session on a review of the proposed facilities regulations. On Wednesday, February the 7th, we will meet at 7:30. Again, we will have our legislative update, and then we will have two work sessions. The first is the Sustainable Maryland Committee recommendations, followed by the Sustainability Manager Program update, and tentatively funding options for the Recreation Center development. And then on Wednesday, February the 14th, it's Valentine's Day, and we are going to show our love by meeting at 7:30. We will have a legislative update as well as 3 work sessions. The first is a quarterly financial report update for the second quarter, the FY 2024 budget amendment number 3, as well as the library update. And just as a reminder for folks, Monday, February the 19th is President's Day. City offices and facilities are closed Sunday and Monday for the President's Day holiday. And so with that, I am going to move into our legislative update this evening and just want to check to see, hi, Ann. Our legislative lobbyist in Annapolis, Ann Sakat, is here today. And just wanted to turn things over to Ann to provide us with an update of what's happening in Annapolis. And it seems like there's a lot of things going on.
Well, it's a lot of things, and then it's a lot of things not also. So in our second week of session here, or having completed 2 weeks, we've had some time to look at the governor's proposed fiscal year 25 budget. And the reaction to it just depends on who you are and what your interests are. It is a smaller budget than last year's budget, and there are funds taken from various places, including some there's money from some of the reserve accounts. There's also been some cuts to certain programs. And there are a few new initiatives as well. So we're still learning more details about what's there, not as the budget hearings have now started, and we're learning things that aren't necessarily evident up front in the budget books themselves. So we are keeping an eye on as much as we can that are really going to be programs that would impact the residents of Tacoma Park, and that may have an impact on any government, city government functions. So there's still a lot more to come with regard to the budget, but if there are specific areas of interest, let me know. I will dig deeper into those things as well. And then when I made that comment earlier about a lot going on and not a lot, we hear there is this year literally a record number of bills that at least have been requested. And so that number I heard is over 3,400 pieces of legislation. There's typically 2,600. So this is a very significant amount. And it's got a lot of the bill drafting, a lot of the process for getting the bills introduced backed up just because of the volume. So there are a lot of bills, including many of the bills on the city's priority list that we just haven't seen yet. They are absolutely in the works. But with that said, we do have a few of them. Councilmember DeBala did a great job today testifying on the two bills related to homeowners and renters' property tax credits, the adjustments there to try to make things a little easier, raising some thresholds to allow more people to take advantage of the homeowners' tax credit, and trying to add some fairness and parity with the renters' tax credit as well, in terms of how eligibility and assets are calculated. And we have seen Delegate Wilkins' Just Cause Eviction Bill get introduced. We're still waiting on the Senate crossfile to be introduced. No hearing on that yet. The good news with the Just Cause bill is that the Legislative Black Caucus has made it one of their priorities for housing, which is great. And there are going to be, as we've said before, lots of housing-related bills this session, including a tenant protection bill coming from the governor. The major environmental bills haven't come out yet, and we're still waiting on all kinds of bills related to transportation and other priorities for the city. So as they come out, we will have the triage group that's been created take a look at them all.
Great, thank you so much, Ann. Really quick question. I saw MML released some mailers today or emails about some of the upcoming testimonies that they're going to have to give on some of the MML priorities. I believe one of them was about the cameras or believe like red light cameras or something to that effect. Have you heard anything on the MML front in terms of what they're planning to do, or?
I have not. I try to check in with MML folks on a regular basis. I have not this week, so I'll make sure to follow up with them tomorrow and figure out if there are things that certainly that the city is very interested in, and where it would be helpful to have the city weigh in.
Yeah, because I think and I said red light camera, but that was what we wanted. But what they put forward was the priority speed camera standardization hearing. I think that's going to be on February the 8th. I'll forward this to you just so you're aware.
Great, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Small.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Ann, how are you? In broad strokes, we've had a variety of conversations about posture going into the legislative session, and I still offer my services of vituperation for whichever one you need. Could you, in your assessment, you kind of talked about the budget looks different depending upon what perspective you have. Given the fact that you have a broad perspective, I was curious about if you could sort of speak to what you think the direction and the policy direction of the administration is going to be, given that this is really the first budget that they have constructed, regardless of whether or not there is a financial boondoggle. Thank you.
So, yeah, the big talk is the fact that we are facing some really serious structural budget deficits in the coming years, and that while the governor's budget, as introduced, is balanced for this year, for this coming year, there's not much in it that addresses the long-term growing by leaps and bounds, growing structural budget deficit. So that's been a lot of the conversation, and folks talking about revenue, but hearing an awful lot from the governor, from the Senate president, that they're not interested in seeing any taxes this year. I think that there is, some grassroots effort to try to look at some tax reform issues, trying to make some of the existing revenue streams more either closing loopholes or more progressive. But I'm not sure there's a lot of appetite for that. And so I think that, a lot of what we're hearing is okay for this year, but going forward, we're really concerned about how we're going to address the growing deficit. And again, I think we've talked about this before here. That deficit is largely because of the commitment the state has made to funding for the blueprint for Maryland's future, our public education system. So I've been talking to some legislators this week who are very concerned, thinking maybe, they may have to either seriously consider taxes or other fees, looking at potentially, revisiting things like the blueprint, like climate solutions, and seeing if maybe some of that needs to be scaled back. So that's a lot of the talk that I'm hearing right now related to the budget. But again, like you mentioned, depends on who you are, what you're looking at. The governor has been talking a lot in the last few months about housing. And he has made some significant increases in the capital budget for some of the housing programs, some of the affordable housing programs. So, so again, it really depends on kind of, are you taking the long view? Are you looking at it, just, in the current situation? And which part of the budget are you looking at?
Thank you. I have one follow-up with that because I don't know. I'm inclined to think about the concept of the glass cliff here, with the first black governor in Maryland and what are considered structural deficits. I think about that a lot around here as well. given the fact that when you say structure, can you just help the audience understand what you mean by that? Here, in a base level structure, when you start talking about structural issues, we're talking about salaries and hard costs of big things. What does that mean in terms of the government or the state government?
When the budget analysts and fiscal experts talk about it, what they are referring to is that in the coming years, how expenditures are outpacing revenues, and that growing gap that they are anticipating is going to be created. That's what they are calling a structural deficit. That if things stay the way they are, the structure that we have, that deficit is going to just continue to grow because, again, expenditures outpacing revenue.
I guess the last thing I would say about that is that I would challenge you or the council or representatives that they are watching, that if you make a policy mandate and then you say that it's the policy mandate that is the problem, but you had to do the policy mandate because of the severe structural problems, then maybe it's other things and other people rather than a well-founded idea.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Small. I just want to do a quick check because we can't see hands, just to confirm that Councilmember Dabala doesn't have any questions as the second person that is on the review work team.
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Anne. We really appreciate you and all of the work that you're doing between meetings to make sure that we're getting our testimonies in and setting people up to testify in Annapolis or virtually. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you. Good night.
Excellent. Have a good night. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our MCPS presentation on public schools, attended by Tacoma Park residents. And just for my colleagues, this is a 60-minute presentation, so just want to be mindful of time. So I just want to confirm that we have MCPS participating virtually.
We do.
Excellent. So I just want to confirm that Ms. Grisby, are you going to be kicking off this discussion? All right. So I'm going to turn things over to our planning manager, Roz Grisby, who will introduce the group.
Thank you. For the record, Rosalind Grigsby, planning manager for the city. We are joined tonight by Montgomery County Public Schools staff. As you recall, when council passed resolution 2023-33, which was about the Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan, council tasked itself with several work sessions, and this is the final of 4 that was on your list. It specifically was to hold a work session on the school facilities within the Minor Master Plan area and the Montgomery County Public Schools site selection and school construction process. This meeting was originally scheduled for October, and because of the timing with the release of the school CIP, MCPS school CIP, Montgomery County Public Schools staff was constrained in their ability to have an open conversation with council, and so the meeting was rescheduled. In preparation for this meeting, we identified 2 additional topics to add to what council had laid out in their resolution. One is enrollment projections, how they're developed, how they're updated, how new development is factored in. And a second is the plans specific to Piney Branch Elementary School, and the future of the building itself, the aging structure, and the swimming pool. Council received hard copies of 2 things today. One is Mayor Searcy's testimony to the Board of Education in November on the CIP, and the second is the chapter of the Down County Consortium section of the FY 2025 capital budget and FY 2025 to 2030 capital improvements program of MCPS. So with that, I will turn it over. We're joined by Seth Adams, Associate Superintendent, Office of Facilities Management, and Adrian Karamayas, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Director, Division of Capital Planning and Real Estate. And they'll present to council and be available for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. So for the record, my name is Seth Adams, Associate Superintendent for the Office of Facilities Management, MCPS. What we wanted to do tonight is to start and just frame the overall capital improvements program. As you heard, we've gone through the initial process, which includes the superintendent's recommendation, and then ultimately has transitioned from that to the Board of Education's request to the county executive and ultimately county council. So just to frame that, the superintendent and the board made the exact same requests. So the total CIP represents $1.99 billion over the next 6 years. And one of the things I think is really important to note is that school construction, along with many other sectors, has experienced significant inflationary pressures coming out of the COVID pandemic. So many of our projects have seen increases anywhere from 15 to 20%, and that's even with reduced scopes along the way. So this particular CIP really was looking to maintain existing projects as we were moving forward. And several of those existing projects are large high schools. I would just say, the 6-year CIP includes 2 new high schools. One is the reopening of Charles Woodward, and the other is the Crown High School. The Charles Woodward High School is scheduled to open in 2027. And that will also include a large boundary study that will include the entire DCC, Walter Johnson cluster, BCC cluster, as well as Walt Whitman. So obviously that project from a boundary standpoint will certainly impact city residents as we go through that process. We are scheduled to have more discussions with the Board of Ed on February 27th regarding that particular boundary. Because there was a delay in that project last year, we will be coming back just to talk about timelines and have an opportunity for the board to weigh in and ultimately have public hearings for residents, students, and families to also weigh in. But we do anticipate that boundary study continuing forward in the coming months and going through that obviously rather large community engagement process. Beyond that, there was very little added to this particular CIP. There were 3 addition projects in total that were added as new projects, along with identifying 4 elementary schools in the future that we would like to look at from a perspective of major capital project. The addition projects are mostly in the East County, in the Magruder cluster, where we see some significant growth just in small pockets. And beyond that, the other projects are really, the elementary school projects we identified as aging infrastructure, but also, looking at it from a programmatic perspective of which schools needed attention. Those 4 schools are Damascus Elementary, Cold Spring Elementary, Twinbrook Elementary, and Whetstone Elementary. Each one represents, a variety of different facility challenges as well as programmatic elements such as community schools, HHH partnerships, pre-K type of programs. And again, I think what's also important is, and actually that was a good update around the legislative session, is that, there are pressures not only from a state, but also from a local perspective. As we've gone through this initial process, we have heard feedback from the county office management and budget around shortfalls and different revenues. The schools are funded, school capital improvements program is funded through bonds, as well as recordation tax, impact tax, and obviously state aid. Recordation tax and impact taxes are significantly lower than what were anticipated by the county. And so that has certainly translated into what we just recently received last week from the county executive as his recommended budget moving forward. That recommended budget is, it's reducing the board's request by close to 100 million, but more impactfully is it's reducing the overall CIP by 346 million in the first 4 years. So there's obviously going to be many, many conversations over the coming weeks around what does that mean around existing projects, new projects, countywide approaches, and then how ultimately is that going to navigate through the county council process. Back to the agenda, just in terms of enrollment, I am going to turn this over to Ms. Karamihas in a minute just to talk through enrollment projections. But I did want to just mention that this year, last year we saw some growth. We are expecting some more growth this year, and actually leveled out. We did do a review of where the numbers were coming short from our projections, and while we were within 1% of the overall projections, it was noticeable that some of our youngest learners, the pre-K enrollment was low, and also some of our 10th grade enrollment was also low. Beyond that, some of our international enrollment came in a little bit lower in that initial September 30th date, but we are seeing, as we do in typical years, more student enrollment from the course of the beginning of the year to now. So that's not to be, it's not unexpected. It's something that does happen. But what was unexpected was just some of the initial enrollment at the beginning of the school year. But we do expect that to continue to rebound, not as significant as before the pandemic, but continue to grow over the course of the next 6 to 10 years. But before I get too far into that, I think it is appropriate to turn it over to Ms. Karamihas just to talk about the enrollment projections, as well as how we factor in new development, and ultimately when does new development make its way into our CIP and projections. Ms. Karamihas?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So in general, we do enrollment projections. We update our enrollment projections every October. They are part of our capital improvements program that is released at the end of October with the superintendent's recommendations for capital projects. I mean, in general, the way enrollment projections are done is the first thing we look at, of course, is the cohort of students, meaning the number of students, if we take an elementary school that were in kindergarten and you move those kindergartners up to first grade, and so on. The first graders move up to second grade, et cetera, et cetera. We also look at turnover of existing homes. That is actually, with the exception of a few areas in the county, Clarksburg, of course, being one of them over probably the past 10 years or so, turnover actually has the most impact to our enrollment projections. It isn't actually new development. So we're always looking at turnover of houses in service areas. We look to trends. We look at data, and we use data not only just 1 year or 2 years, but 5 years back, and then using that forward in order to do our projections. We also work very closely with Park and Planning. We get all the development from Park and Planning. Anything that is approved, that has received approval, becomes part of our enrollment projections. And so we work very closely with them to make sure we are all on the same page with the development. There could be development that is on the books but hasn't yet been approved. And so those developments do not go into the CIP, but if there are developments that have been approved, we do that. We include that. We don't include it, though, all at the same time. As you can assume, if there's, for example, a 200-unit development going in, not all the kids show up at the same time, and not all of the kids are in the same grade. So we look at what we see, what trends are. We put those kids in over a period of time. We do use the Park and Planning's determination for student generation rates. Student generation rates are, for example, a single family home will yield X amount of students. A townhouse will yield X amount of students. A garden versus a high rise will yield X amount of students. Those student generation rates are determined by Park and Planning, and then we incorporate those depending on the units, how many students will actually come from that development. And we do it based upon elementary school, middle school, and high school. And so we take all of that information and also what we hear. We actually do some traveling around if there's some new development and see what's going on, if it's being done quicker, if it's slowing down a bit. And we'll take all of that information and we will do our enrollment projections. Again, enrollment projections are done every October for the 6-year period. At the secondary level, we actually show 15 and 20 years as well. We don't show that at the elementary school level, just at the secondary. And then during the school year, as Mr. Adams indicated, there is always a increase in enrollment. Kids, we are a transient county where kids are coming in. They're also leaving, but they're also coming in. And so we look at that information from month to month. And then in the springtime, we update our enrollment projections for the following school year. So we're right now in the 2023-2024 school year. We already have, and I heard that you have our CIP, at least the Down County Consortium section. So you can see for next school year, the 24-25 school year, we have that enrollment projection. We will take a look at that over the next month, and it will be updated potentially as part of our master plan in the summertime.
All right. So the next portion of this is to talk about the specifics of the CIP and as it relates to the city of Tacoma Park. As many of you are aware, the Piney Branch Elementary School was identified several years ago as a facility that is in need of infrastructure improvements. We actually started out as a possible addition. Again, there's not a lot of footprint there for us to accommodate additional students through the use of relocatable classrooms. So the project started out as an addition, and we went through a variety of community engagement meetings, brought in architects, looked at a variety of approaches. While there were approaches to add capacity to Piney Branch, it actually, right around the same time as we were coming to conclusion of the addition, feasibility and initial design, the Board of Education transitioned from the old modernization approach to major capital project approach. And all that really means is we're looking at a variety of other factors, before making the decision to do either a tear down or a renovation or an addition. We developed the key facility indicators that include everything from infrastructure to other aspects of buildings that are impactful to the student experience. And out of that new assessment, Piney Branch obviously is a school that we are recommending from a MCPS standpoint to rebuild. During the reconstruction, obviously, it would add, more capacity, not significantly more capacity, but would add more capacity, and ultimately create the 21st century learning spaces that we expect for an elementary school. And I'm not sure if many know, but Piney Branch was originally designed as a middle school. So there's some challenges, not only from a grade level appropriateness, but also ADA, as it is one of the only split level, as we call it here, type of schools in the county. So it is in much needed, it is in a much needed state of requiring attention. However, where we are is that, as we've gone through the CIP processes, we did make it to the point where we were engaged by Park and Planning around this minor master plan and what that meant for the elementary school moving forward. Obviously, from our perspective, the property is not as ideal as what we would ultimately look for an elementary school. So as we were going through that process, we were optimistic that that minor master plan would hopefully identify a alternative location for us as we move forward. To just frame that, though, I think there's some misnomers that the Board of Education, could just buy a piece of property and move forward. And ultimately, that's not the case. So if there's ever a property acquisition, that has to obviously go through, the county executive, the county council. It goes to the state clearinghouse for us to go through that process. But it is not a quick process by any stretch of the imagination. Majority of our properties that come to us are through a form of a dedication. And so as we entered that process with Park and Planning, obviously that was something that we were hopeful that we could have more robust conversations around. Are there properties, are there a different vision for properties that we could take advantage of? And then ultimately see what the opportunities exist for the existing school site. I don't believe that's the case in terms of how the minor master plan was originally or initially developed. So where we are right now is we are working with our board and obviously a variety of other stakeholders around, okay, what is the next steps for Piney Branch? We do have plans to be able to reconstruct on its location, but reconstruction on its location will certainly impact the park, will certainly impact some of the neighboring roadways, and then obviously we're neighbors to you all in the council building, most likely some level of impact to the roadways around the council structure as well. So you know, as we move forward, the next steps are really going to be focused around, does it make sense to engage with the county executive, county council around the idea of property acquisition, or do we just need to move forward with the design of a new Piney Branch in its current location? I would foresee that as going to be something that happens over the course of the next several months, and then we'll transition ultimately into the next CIP, which would be the amended FY26, or would be the amended FY25 to 30 in the FY26 budget. So that's when I anticipate where MCPS will come out with superintendent recommendation around what are the next steps for Piney Branch. In the meantime, obviously, we will continue to support the school, support you know, the families of Piney Branch, and manage the facility from a maintenance perspective between now and when we get to the point of making that recommendation. Beyond that, there are very limited projects that are impacting the city within the CIP. Obviously, we have many of our countywides, what we call countywides, everything from HVAC to ADA to safe access. I do know that there are a variety of smaller scale projects that we are evaluating at the elementary and middle school, elementary schools and middle school. And certainly we will be working with those individual school administrators around what those projects are, the timing, and then how to communicate that with families. But beyond that, that is where we are from the overall CIP. I do expect, similar to, as you heard from the state, we are likely to see significant impacts in our CIP from this point moving forward with the county council. There's likely to be significant delays with existing projects. And I also believe there's unlikely room in the fiscal capacity to be able to add new projects in the foreseeable future. So while Piney Branch is included, that's obviously a very good thing. It's included from a planning perspective currently. So we're hopeful that as we continue through the CIP process and into the amended CIP process, we will be able to include construction dollars for that particular project in the very near future. So that concludes our verbal presentation for tonight. If there's any specific questions, we're certainly here to open up for discussion.
Great. Well, first I want to thank you both for coming out tonight and speaking with us about the process. And I actually would like to kick us off because I want to make sure that I understand the process a little bit better, especially as it pertains to your interaction with park and planning. And so, and I know that we may not fully know all of the different conversations that happen behind the scenes in terms of coordination amongst the various groups, but there were previously lots of conversations that were happening around trying to identify alternative sites within the city for the location or relocation of an elementary school. And it's my understanding that through that process, all of the properties that just to a large degree were deemed inadequate, right? They weren't deemed as viable locations. And so I guess what I'm trying to understand is how it kind of feels like we're going back to square one. So what was the thought behind trying to have those conversations with Park and Planning to try to identify a site as part of the minor master plan amendment when it had already been deemed that a number of the spaces that would have been under consideration were not viable options?
So yes, I believe this dates back probably 7 or 8 years now that I've been involved in discussions around Adventist property and other properties around within the city of Tacoma Park. The initial review of the Adventist property, we did come back with viable options.
Okay.
What I do believe, though, however, is that the commitment from the county as a whole around property acquisition, next steps around what that fiscal approach would be to create a school site on that property was not something that was pursued by county executive or county council at that time.
Okay.
So in this process, we were obviously hopeful that through a amendment, through looking at it from a zoning perspective, it would make it a little bit more, would allow us a greater opportunity, whether it be through an acquisition process or a different type of dedication process, allow us a little more, I guess, political runway, if you were to say, to pursue an alternative property. Unfortunately, it does not look like that's going to be the case. So while I wouldn't say we're going back to square one, yes, we are going back to the existing property to see what we can do, not only at the existing property, but also from the park property, which is adjacent, to see if there's the ability to start talking about that piece of property, as well as any additional school-owned land that we can work with the parks to be able to offset any impacts to their green space.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, just for clarification. So we were informed that MCPS had not provided comments on the minor master plan, and that if there had been some form of comments that were provided, because I guess where I was getting a little lost is it seemed like the CIP mentioned Piney Branch Elementary and that there were references to delay in order to see what would happen out of the minor master plan. But then the minor master plan didn't really make much of a mention of anything in terms of Piney Branch, and we were told that MCPS could have provided comments to the minor master plan, which could have helped to clarify what was being looked for in terms of school space or additional analysis that needed to happen. So does it normally happen where MCPS provides written comments or feedback on minor master plans? And did you all do that for this one in particular?
So we did not provide formal comments during the introduction process, but we meet with Park and Planning monthly, had met about a year in advance and continue to meet and talk about this particular minor master plan. The challenge is the Board of Education does not typically comment on different master plan approaches, whether it be amendments or new master plans through the planning department. However, we did just come to an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, which is set to be released in the next several weeks, around greater interactions on this front, and how the Board of Education and the Planning Board can work a little bit closer together in terms of how to advocate for one another. The challenge that we were receiving from the planning staff, and I don't want to go, this is certainly stepping outside my expertise, but in terms of when they start to look at school sites, they're looking at it purely from a growth, from an enrollment, from a capacity standpoint. The challenge here is that, we are able to accommodate the enrollment growth at the site. The challenge is the site is not as ideal as we would look for from a particular school site. So their advocacy, the comments perspective, was going to be a little bit challenging to say that we don't like the site where it is, and we would prefer a new site so that we can have a little bit more elbow room and provide more amenities to our students. That may be more of a structural policy thing that we need to address in the future, but we did provide many comments along the way. It was just not from a formal Board of Education perspective during the introduction or open comment period of that process.
Great, thank you. And before I turn things over to my colleagues, one last question. Montgomery Blair. So we have a lot of our families go to or feed into Blair. And I recall seeing language in the CIP about future efforts in terms of Blair. Can you speak a little bit about Montgomery Blair and what some of the plans may be in terms of addressing some of the capacity issues there?
Well, so yes, Blair is obviously one of the schools that will be addressed through the reopening of Woodward High School. When we include the entire Downtown County Consortium, as well as the other schools that I mentioned before, Blair is one of the schools that is, I believe, the most overutilized at the moment of all schools. So obviously, when we come into that boundary study process, it is going to be very impactful. The other important thing to note is that the current scope of that boundary also includes middle schools. So we will not only just be looking at high school boundaries, there may be impacts to middle schools. So yes, the Blair will be addressed through this boundary study process. Boundary studies are challenging, but in this case, to make sure we have adequate capacity at each of our high schools in the Downtown County Consortium, as well as the other schools that I mentioned, there will be changes in school assignments, changes in school boundaries.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Small.
Thank you, Mayor. I would begin by saying that the members of the panel should appreciate the fact that you tried to get in front of some of these things, because I'm going to be a little bit more direct than you. It's my burden from being an attorney. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to make some assertions. And I'm going to talk broad policy. The presupposition here by anybody who is a parent that has kids in these schools, in this immediate area, is, thank goodness we have such a wonderful school that is, or school system, that is inadvertently a neighborhood school for so many affluent people. Now, the way in which you've constructed this argument is difficult for me, because specifically, the fact that that is unnoted, and that in larger parlance, the language is, well, we're going to have to do a boundary study, and it's going to have some difficulties. What you are really actually saying is that the school system is overburdened by the elitist notions of neighborhood schools. And if too much attention is paid to the fact that in reality, the only kids from Tacoma Park who aren't zoned to go to Tacoma Park schools are poor kids or kids in a socioeconomic area that is inconsistent with the grand vision of the rest of Tacoma Park, then you have an institutional problem. When you add to that institutional problem that there is no place in the school system where you get a straight answer from a person, whether it be about placements for their students or the manner by which you select processes to develop schools. What you said here tonight was that you had a process and then suddenly you changed the process. But you also said that there were 4 schools on that list with an articulated need. Then somewhat later and under questioning, you said, well, yeah, there's 5 schools. We already knew that you guys were in a bad spot. So at that point, the conversation becomes circular and nonspecific. At the point at which you transfer to the real estate person and you begin talking about bond issues and things like that that are platitudinous to people who are, relatively speaking, at least astute enough to get elected, it's important to note where these schools are that have been developed, why they have been developed, what the list was, and over time, how it could be that there were a substantive set of conversations about this issue, and then an actual event in the county that could have indicated to everyone in the area, particularly all of the people who work in high levels of policy, whether they be in the county, including the county executive, or state and federal levels, that we have a functioning government that is in control of our school system and in control of our planning process. But what you actually have said is that, well, there was a planning process, and we really thought planning was going to take care of it. But when planning came in here, they said, well, this is really MCPS's responsibility. Now, one of those is a quasi-governmental institution or a quasi-state institution, so you don't necessarily have as much agency with regard to that. But given the weight and heft of the people who live here and who casually traipse up the street to take their kids to school, one would think that there would at least be some desire to come in here and address the fact that you started out behind the 8 ball here. And someone should explain to us in clear terms, whether that be you, Adrian, your superior, or Park and Planning, how it's possible that we could put an 11-cent tax increase on people, and how it's possible that we could have an avowed commitment to education. But yet, the actual people who were paid by our actual tax dollars can get no straight answer as to why you don't work together, why we're not on the list, and why inadvertently the fact that the policies go back to square one means that people like my dear friend Cara Honzak, who is in the adjacent ward to me, doesn't send her kids to school with the kids that live around her. But Ward 6 does send their kids to those schools, even though we used to be the only kids that didn't go. Because at some point 11 years ago, people complained, and rather than fix this, you just move things around. So be clear to either the superintendent or the board or the county executive that inadvertently elected officials who know that what you have just done is a platitudinous mess from the perspective of someone who would do an issue rule analysis conclusion memorandum or presentation, that I don't really care about why it is that you don't have an answer. I care about the fact that you don't have a good answer, and that for whatever reason, people in the county seem to think it's okay to come in here and not have good answers for people. But inadvertently, we had a couple kids in here tonight who were probably doing assignments, and they don't have a good answer from their school district. Be very clear. I am not a hayseed, I'm not an ogre, and I'm not a bad guy. But from a policy perspective, you cannot come in here without answers and then say that you were soon going to seek answers when you have institutional problems that affect my kid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Small. Councilmember Honzak.
Okay. I actually spent a lot of time today digging through data, and I appreciate hearing your perspective on this. I'm glad to hear that you have said that there is a challenge here that needs solving, but I am confused about the lack of urgency, and I am also confused about why this hasn't gone directly into the MMPA plan. And so I tried to look through the data. I tried to look at land plots. I think the most interesting thing that I could add to the conversation that I haven't seen written anywhere is I took out Google Earth and I started measuring plots of land around the city, including right here in my Ward 5. So I just want to share some of the things that are troubling me about why this isn't a burning, urgent issue to make something happen now and make something happen yesterday, 5 years ago, and even why and how, what can we do to make sure that whatever your office does, this gets in the plan immediately. There's no more back and forth like this. We're not going to go another 5 years without a school. So let me just lay some of those on the table. One is, as you know, Piney Branch sits on the smallest plot of land in the entire county at 1.9 acres. Even if you add, like you suggested, the Piney Branch local Montgomery County Park, which I measured on Google Earth very precisely, it only comes to a total of 3.47 acres. There is not any elementary school, I looked at every single school today in the entire county. There's not one school that's that small. That's 1.2 acres smaller than our smallest school, which incidentally is the school that the kids in my ward, the poorest ward of our city, are zoned to, Rolling Terrace, at 4.3 acres. There are only about 10 schools in the entire school district that are less than 7.5 acres, which is your declared minimum. So I guess what really, really troubles me is why is it that this is a sticking point? You know, it should have happened years ago that someone said this school area needs to be quadrupled at a minimum to even meet the bare minimum standard. Meanwhile, I just want to point out that, you know, in Walt Whitman cluster, Rockville cluster, Winston Churchill cluster, and the Bethesda Chevy Chase cluster, some of our whitest, wealthiest places across the county, every single school has been updated in the 1990s and the 2000s, and our school was built in 1973. I do not think it is a coincidence, and I'm sorry to sound like a real ogre, but I gotta put MCPS on the spot. I do not think it is a coincidence that this school just happens to serve some of the poorest and most, and some of the kids who also have melanin in their skin in this county. And we have a corridor on Maple Avenue right next to this school that is some of the highest concentration of affordable housing in the entire county. We're the only city that's had rent stabilization for the last 40 years. So if we're talking about equity issues, I want to see fire under the belly of MCPS. Please, 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 please. It is time. We need to hear what your plans are. We need to see exactly what you're going to do. And I want to lay out the different arguments I've heard about why there may be delays. One, I've heard that you know, it's a capacity issue. I'm not at all convinced that there's a capacity issue here because we're talking about an already existing problem with smallest per capita footprint and smallest footprint in the entire county. Is it the pool? The pool can't really be an excuse anymore, even if our community wants it, because there's a brand new pool opening in Silver Springs. So if you need to tell us that we can't have that pool anymore, I'll be the first to say it, even though I love that pool. We need to move on. Is it the acreage? You said 7.5 is your minimum. I looked at, again, every single school in the entire county. You have in Down County, which is where you see most of the change. In 2007, you built on 5 acres, Arcola Elementary School. Highland View, Hampshire Estates, Pinecrest, Rolling Terrace, and Tacoma Park Elementary School, all less than 7.5 acres, all redone in the 1980s and the 1990s. And is it the MMPA saying that over 10 years that we are going to have 3,500 new residents, which is what you were sharing, Ms. Karamihas? I'm not convinced that this is, I see that that's your criteria, but it does not make sense that this school wasn't already trying to maximize square footage for the existing students for the last 20 years. I now have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old who both came through that school, and they had windowless classrooms for the years that they were at the school, no natural light in their classrooms, and the smallest square footage per capita, and they still don't have a school for the students that are going to that school. So I'm sorry to have given you another talk, but this is very, very deeply troubling to me, and I think the data speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Honzak. So I want us to be solution focused, right? As you can tell, we are passionate about seeing advancement in terms of our elementary schools and really wanting to push towards advancement of this goal that has been talked about in our community for such a long time. And so I'm going to ask a question because I know you've been listening, and then I'll hit Councilmember Dabala. I see our hand raised. You had mentioned that because of what transpired, and we can't cry over spilled milk. We can't go back in history and kind of reconfigure anything that happens with the minor master plan. But you mentioned that because they weren't able to identify a alternative site as part of the minor master plan process for the school. Just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. That there could be a recommendation for us to rebuild Piney Branch on its current site. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the only option that is presented in front of us right now.
Okay. And so I just want to make sure I'm understanding the process for moving that, because one of my major concerns is you all heard the legislative update, right? So while there's commitment for dollars right now, there may not be commitments for dollars in the future. You're hearing right now the county is also talking about shortfalls and budgetary shortfalls, and I don't think those are going to get any better with time. So understanding that you're preparing for some cuts to the current CIP, what would be, I'm trying to make sure I understand the process. So is it completely impossible for us to try to get aspects of the Piney Branch rebuild included in the 25 to 30 CIP? Or are we definitely waiting for FY26? We pushed all of our political levers, right? Is that something, is that train completely gone, or is it because our school was mentioned in the CIP, just not put in the CIP for funding, that's something that we cannot do at this point?
So that's correct. The superintendent and the Board of Education did not request construction funding for Piney Branch Elementary.
Okay.
Particular request.
So I hate to follow up on that, but
Councilmember Small,
I
wait
really
until
do
you're
have other
acknowledged,
questions.
please.
I really
Thank
do
you.
have
If you
a
could please
lot
wait
of
until you're
questions.
acknowledged.
So many
Thank
questions.
you. So basically, because the board did not put into the CIP for funding for the 25-30, we're basically looking for it to be included as part of the 26-31, or you said FY26. So I'm trying to figure out the CIP process, and so where we would be really trying to push.
So yes, it's a biannual CIP. So it's, but it's also a 6-year CIP. So the off year is typically when new projects are not introduced, but that has been a change over the past several years. So when we get to the FY26, that'll be the amended FY20 to 30 CIP. That is the first opportunity where we would be able to, the Board of Education would be able to request construction funding for Piney Branch Elementary.
Got it. Thank you very much for clarifying. So we're talking about the amendment opportunity for the 25 to 30, not waiting until the next iteration of the CIP. Okay. That's really helpful. And Councilmember Small, I'm going to go to Councilmember DeBala, and then I'll come back.
I saw her hand. I apologize.
Councilmember DeBala, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, am I now on? Does everybody hear me and see
You
me?
are. We can hear and see you.
Great. So I've been following, I think, and I first want to say that I do support the comments that my colleagues have made so far. And I also am somewhat confused, having followed this for many years myself within the community. So just as a first question, so if there is no, if we are talking about rebuilding on the site and we want to influence the amendment to this budget for fiscal 26, when does that start? When is that? Is that next month? Is that a year from now?
The superintendent would make her recommendation next October.
Okay, and so we presume there's a bunch of public input before that in this spring and summer.
So there can be public input at any time, right? So we actually will have spring updates to our board on the February 27th meeting. And as I mentioned, there will be public hearings associated with that. So there could be public input as early as March of this year.
Okay. So I appreciate your clarifying that, because I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to get that ask that question tomorrow morning. What can we do here in the city to influence the process? I did want to just back up and say I'm still a little fuzzy on why there is no construction recommendation yet for the Piney Branch. You talked about it, but I'm not sure I quite got the summary.
So going back in history, there was planning dollars that
Yes.
were associated with Piney Branch. There was
Yes,
construction dollars that were recommended by the
right,
along the way. So again, when we talk about different avenues here, it wasn't that construction dollars weren't recommended because we didn't have a site. Construction dollars were not recommended because there was a decline in enrollment leveled out at Piney Branch. And as many on this call have talked about, we represent the full school district. So there are schools that were over capacity, similar situation from an aging infrastructure, farms that are 3 or 4 times that of Piney Branch. So the Board of Education made different decisions around where to apply their CIP funding.
okay. I would be interested in some follow-up statistics on that question, not right now, because that's sounds different from what I remember. However, moving forward, it sounds as if you are suggesting that we pursue this avenue of funds for the site and not looking at a new site, or maybe I'm not missing, again, maybe with all the talk, I've missed the main point here.
Well, I think there's a variety of things that we can talk about from
Okay,
the site or advocacy around existing site. And I'll actually take us to where we were successful up in the city of Gaithersburg. The city of Gaithersburg, similar to City of Tacoma Park, recognized a dire need for capacity in a school. Rather than try to go through a property acquisition process, we partnered with the city and came up with a unique opportunity, a unique solution to utilize existing city property in order to construct a school. So that may be one opportunity. Other opportunities are if truly everyone from a community, from a city perspective is interested in a different site, joint advocacy of the county executive, county council around dedicating funds to property acquisition. Absolutely, that's something that we can pursue. If those other options are off the table, then yes, I think then it's definitely advocacy around reconstructing, rebuilding on the existing site. And we have talked about this for many years in terms of small school sites. While there was reference to an ideal site, that we don't see that all the time. Even in some of the new dedications, it's 5 acres or under. So this idea of developing elementary schools that are more urban in nature, similar to some city types of schools, have been discussions at the county council, at the planning department, and otherwise. So that's certainly something that we can talk about for this existing property if that's the direction that we end up going.
and what would you suggest to help us get through this variety of things in variety of directions, which seems to be where we've been stuck for a while?
And I agree. I think, being personally involved in trying to find a site and exploring private property and not necessarily gaining traction around funding of property acquisition, I think our attention absolutely needs to be on reconstructing the best possible school that we can on the existing property. And that may include a partnership with the parks. Likely will include a partnership with the parks, and hopefully it will also include a partnership with the city, because all 3 properties are obviously very closely intertwined in terms of how to make that a great school site.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Small, I appreciate you waiting for me to get done with my list of questions.
Really quickly, thank you, Councilmember DeBala. Just as a reminder for my colleagues, we have 6 minutes remaining on this discussion. Councilmember Small?
That's excellent, because that means Dougie Fresh is on. Now, the real question that I have for you guys with regard to data and data manipulation or technocratic apathy is this. If you were talking about the data points that are necessary, and you're talking about enrollment being the primary one, but you also have so many different things that talk about your commitment to equity and fairness and diversity with regard to schooling, I would like to know that what other than a hard cut socioeconomic data point do you use to determine that given the particular densities of any given school, perhaps there is a need, given the institutional neglect of the school system or the grand mandate policy statements that both the county executive or the superintendent make? Could you provide me with a listing of what the data points are that determine your priorities, and a listing of how those conclusions were made for this particular round? Because I am asking you from a professional standpoint, and I will make a Public Information Act request if you cannot provide me with this. My assertion to you is this: if your blunt instrument for these things is just that there are poor people in certain places, and the assumption is we can send them to certain places to fill out things, then what you were really doing is telling diverse neighborhoods like mine or Cara's, or maybe even Terry's, I don't know, but the overwhelming diversity of this city, that the way in which you prioritize people is that it's a good thing you're poor. Otherwise, you'd get no consideration at all. Because essentially, again, you were talking about having changed the process catastrophically to include a variety of new indicators and data points. And somehow in that process, you actually omitted the actual place where the actual county executive lives. And somehow that seems to me to be political. And I would like to be disabused of those notions. So I'd like to see the stuff.
Thank you, Councilmember Small. I just want to remind my colleagues that on page 4-30 in the handout that we received, it lists the demographic characteristics of the schools. It includes
That is not what I'm asking about.
enrollment, farms, ELD, and morbidity rates.
I am
So just
talking
wanna-
about decision matrices internal to decision-making processes that apparently we have no say in, and that we are just supposed to be like, oh, well, oops. Particularly since I do sort of remember the gist of your testimony being, oh, we forgot.
Thanks, Councilmember Small, for clarifying, but I do recall that there were other council members that were asking for statistics. And I do just want to remind my colleagues that there are some base statistics that are included in the packet that you've received. Councilmember Hanzak?
Yeah, I just have one follow-up question. So are you saying that there is still room to advocate for building on the Washington Adventist site? And if that's correct, then what exactly are you suggesting that we can do about that? And by my calculations, there's, again, I said I looked at that Google Earth. I found there was about 6.24 acres total where the hospitals currently lies, and some of the reconstruction can be done, even though they talk about larger numbers than that if you include the university campus. So that would be a total of 6.24 acres that's potentially constructible by my calculations. That's rough. That's not a formal number. But are you saying there's room to advocate for that on that site possibly still?
So I will go back in time. So we did look at the entire property, not only just the hospital, but the university site. During review with city staff, I would mention, we identified what would be an ideal location on that particular piece of property. What we were told at that time is the ideal location on that piece of property for a school site had some constraints surrounding it because of existing building leases that were tied to the Adventist property. I can't give you the exact details of that, but we did identify what would be an ideal location on the entire campus of Adventist around where a school could be located. So I think there's always opportunity for advocacy, but what I would say is that that has been identified and discussed year after year for the past 8 years, and it just doesn't seem to gain traction. So if that's something that the mayor and council can talk with the county executive or county council about, then certainly we would be very supportive, as we were back when we identified an ideal location on that particular campus.
Can I ask you to be a little bit more direct, though? I mean, what exactly, in your opinion, in the 8 years you've been spending on this, do you think is the main impediment? Is it the exact siting of the school on that lot? Or is it, can you just be a little bit more direct about what you think are the key obstacles? Is it possibly just that housing is a higher priority possibly for the county, to be honest with? I'd prefer your utmost transparency if you can, so that we understand. I mean, it seems to me that at this point, probably what this council should be pushing for in collaboration with you is, let's build already yesterday on the existing site, even though it's clearly inadequate and too small, and no one wants to lose any of our green space there in the county park. But I just really want to know whether we give up for good, or whether, this is a fight still worth fighting over the next 6 months or so.
It's my professional opinion is that the cost of property acquisition is the barrier to that property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulcher, I'm sorry, we're at time, so this will be the last.
It'll be fast.
Yeah.
I could just really use some help, and I don't know whether it would be one of you two or someone else from MCPS, about how you arrive at some of the enrollment numbers and the capacity numbers, because it's my understanding that, for instance, at Tacoma Park Elementary School, that many classrooms that were not necessarily built to be used in the way that they're being used, they're being used in different, more dynamic ways, but the reason they're doing that is in order for us to have, appropriate teacher to children ratios. Like there's math classes and reading classes being pulled out in order to keep numbers low, in order to be at Montgomery County Public School standards. And so from what I'm hearing about people in that school is that it does feel overcapacity, whether these numbers tell a different story. And so just to understand, how I hear that those classrooms were built for 17 kids, they have 21 kids inside of them. Like, why is that okay? And why does that mean that a school isn't over capacity? So like a more detailed conversation would be really helpful for me to understand, how it's not over capacity, because I don't see it from speaking to the people actually in those schools.
Well, I can give a quick answer, and then if you want follow-up, we certainly can provide that. So I just want to, and we have these conversations multiple times with different people who ask relatively the same question. A school staffing is very different than capacity. Staffing is done through the operating budget. Capacity is done actually based upon a yearly review of the classroom and our capacities. And actually you have that, if you have the entire section of the the Down County Consortium papers, if you look on 4-31, you can see how a capacity is calculated at every school. That isn't about staffing. That's about the capacity. And when we talk about classrooms, there are certain, every year, based upon the operating budget, staffings, there could be minimums, maximums, but if there are 18 kids in a classroom one year and 21 kids in the classroom the next, the school isn't over capacity because there are 3 more children in that classroom. The school becomes overcrowded or over capacity when there aren't enough classrooms for teachers. And so staffing is very, very different than capacity. And when you talk about staffing, so for a school that's a class size reduction school, which means that they get more additional dollars for more resources, they can use it for support teachers, for classroom teachers. If a school is Title I, they get even more dollars for even more resources and even more teachers. So many schools will do exactly what you just said. they'll have an extra support teacher, let's say a math teacher, and they may pull 5 kids from, 4 third grade classrooms to make those classes smaller and pull kids out to support them in math or support them in reading. That doesn't mean that the school is overcrowded. The school's capacity is its capacity based on a number, whether it's 18-1 for kindergarten. If it's a class size reduction, it's 18 for kindergarten, first and second grade. It's 25-1 at third, fourth, and fifth grade. Even if there are 27 kids in that classroom, the school is still not over capacity. That's about staffing. So if parents are concerned about there are too many kids in the classroom, that's really an operating budget issue with staffing and funds available
If you look at
versus
this piece of
the
paper-
actual
Councilmember Small,
capacity of
I'm
the
so
school.
sorry. Councilmember Small, please wait until you are acknowledged. This is Councilmember Fulcher's time. Thank you.
That's all I have. I hope that at least gives you an idea. And again, I can provide additional information offline if you'd like.
Just to clarify, so the size of a classroom doesn't matter with how many students you can fit into that classroom?
So we identify classrooms based on a size. So, and we have a standard, even like Mr. Adams talked about our perfect for a piece of property to build an elementary school, middle school, or high school. We have a standard, but there's always flexibility in that standard. The average, for the most part, at one point we were building 900 square foot classrooms. We are now actually building some classrooms that are smaller, especially when we look at some of our schools. So we designate classrooms based on their size. We have in elementary schools, middles, and high schools what we call support rooms that are much smaller. It's the idea of what you just said, having a support teacher pull out maybe 8 or 10 kids and do a smaller class focused on something. Those would not be designated as classrooms. So if you look on 4-31, you can see we have classrooms and then we have support spaces. Those support spaces are not counted in capacity, only the classrooms are.
I mean, I'm a mother of 4, and so when I say that that I have concerns because I know that there's more than 8 kids in those support classes, it's because I know that from personal experience, right? Like it's not.
Yeah, you're just
That's
saying words.
not what's happening. It's not 8 kids being pulled into a classroom. It's much bigger than that.
I didn't say 8. It could be
Okay.
it could be 12. We have support rooms that are 600 square feet. The idea is you should be able to put 15 kids in there. So it's hard to give an answer to a space that I don't know what that space is. But we designate classrooms based on a standard and do have support spaces for those types of pullouts. But again, class size reduction schools, Title I schools, they do get much more supports, and those supports have a space that they go to.
Thank you very much. So we're at time for this discussion, but I do, want to thank you both for coming out tonight. And I know that this has been we've been waiting with bated breath to meet with you all, to chat with you all. And I do appreciate you coming out and answering our questions. And I know that you sense our passion, right? Because it is one of the main goals of this council is to really try to advance access to resources for our children, be it school capacity and improving the school experience, or parks and fields, and really trying to advance a livable community for everyone in our community. So I do just want to kind of close with a couple of quick points that I think might be helpful, and maybe in looking at our city manager, maybe some points for follow-up. One of the things that I do think will be important for us is to make sure that we are doing our due diligence just to confirm within the city that we don't have any options for space. I feel very confident that the answer is no, but we'll do our due diligence and make sure that we're able to follow up with you all on that. The other point is just making sure, and I heard that March, and we'll have staff do a follow up with you all just to confirm of the timeline in which we need to begin to do our advocacy in terms of the amended CIP for 2025-2030, so that we can make sure that, you know, after we've done our due diligence, if we've all reached the same conclusion, which I think we are at, that there won't be any magical space for manna that just falls in order that could kind of fit the bill, not just as it relates to space, square footage, but as it relates to acquisition costs, that we can advocate to get Piney Branch Elementary, the construction costs included in the CIP. And it was mentioned about the operations, and I appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk us through the difference between enrollment versus class teacher ratio versus transition. And so can you just confirm, like, when we're talking about the CIP, but the operational budget should be getting ready to come up as well, correct? That's a part of the county budget process. Okay, so if we have some additional follow-up questions, just so that we understand those operational budgetary issues that we may want to push the county to help us with supporting, that would be great for us to be able to send those additional follow-up questions that we may have, specifically as we got into that nuance around, you know, enrollment versus, you know, the teacher-student ratio versus the swing space idea, and how that may relate to the operational budget. So I'm just going to ask my colleagues that if you have additional questions that we need to follow up with MCPS, we could please just make sure that we forward those to our city manager. And then that way, I think between those various next steps, I think we'll be in a better place. And I do just want to make sure that we're having open communication with you all as well. I think we were kind of doing a game of telephone, and so just trying to, like, hearing from planning versus hearing, and what we were hearing was just slightly different. And I know that you sense the frustration that I know I have, and I don't want to speak for members of council that are frustrated by that. And so one of the things we would like to do is just increase our communication with the Board of Ed, but also with the superintendent's office, just so that we're all speaking and singing the same song in terms of what may be possible for our students in Takoma Park. But again, I appreciate you all coming out, and I thank you so much. I know we went a little long, but we're really grateful that you all have come out today. All right, awesome. Thank you all so much. Great. Okay, so we're running about 30 minutes behind, but I do want to make sure that we're able to get through our public comments. So we're going to move into public comments before we take our break. We'll take our break before the voting session for those that are in need of a break. So we'll start with public comments. And just as a reminder for folks, we have 2 voting items this evening. The second reading ordinance amending the city code to remove provisions regarding the Nuclear Free Committee, as well as consent agenda, where we are making appointments to numerous committees and boards and committees. The Arts and Humanities Committee, the Board of Elections, Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs, appointments to the Ethics Commission, appointments to the Recreation and Community Engagement Committee, as well as appointments to the Sustainable Maryland Committee. So do we have any public comments this evening on voting items? Come on, Dad.
Linda Pence-Gunter, Ward 1. I'm here to ask you, futilely I know, to oppose the amendment to the City Code striking the Nuclear-Free Takoma Park Committee. You say here that, quote, many specific functions originally assigned to the committee are now performed by city staff. 2 weeks ago, Councilmember Randy Gibson introduced an amendment welcoming city residents to hold educational events on nuclear-free issues after this was deleted from the code, for which we thank you. The need for this amendment makes it clear that there was and is zero intention by the city staff to conduct educational outreach, one of those many specific functions of the Nuclear Free Committee. Further, how will the city now report back on purchases in compliance with the Nuclear Free Zone Act? Also now struck from the code is item C3 regarding implementation of a socially responsible investment policy in conformity with the Nuclear Free Zone Act. Your Paid Citizens Task Force on Sustainable Banking and Investments recommended 2 years ago that the city pursue sustainable banking that excluded institutions that finance nuclear weapons producers and fossil fuels. Could we have a progress report on this? As far as we know, the city still banks with Truist, a major financier of nuclear weapons companies. This is not in conformity with the Nuclear Free Zone Act. Who will now monitor this? Finally, I want to address the sensitive issue of diversity, which I'll note you have not codified as a requirement for citizen committees. However, it was a chief reason you gave for abolishing the Nuclear Free Committee, which at the time had 5 white members and 1 of mixed race. I agree that diversity is essential, especially for city committees concerned with day-to-day issues in Tacoma Park. But a lack of diversity in civic engagement is not a challenge restricted to the Nuclear Free Committee. Let's look at who stands before you here at this microphone week after week. Almost all of us are white and, yes, like me, older. 5 of the 6 members of this council are white, the same ratio as the Nuclear Free Committee you abolished. There is no one on this council directly from countries in Africa, Central and South America, Asia, the Middle East, and yet I am sure you work hard to represent the interests of those diverse constituents not reflected on this council. I can never know what it feels like to walk in the shoes of my Sierra Leonean brother-in-law, my Indian stepfather and his children, or my Vietnamese daughters. But I can, just like all of you on this council, try my best to represent them, to be an ally. After all, nuclear weapons are entirely indiscriminate killer. This was not a good reason to abolish the committee. Wouldn't it be better to focus our collective energies on increasing the engagement of all residents of Tacoma Park, rather than silencing those already willing to work on important issues that affect the survival of all of us? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on voting items this evening? Do we have any virtual?
Yes, we have Julie Bodie to comment virtually.
Great.
I'll bring her in. She is. So Julie, you should be getting a request to unmute.
It just came.
Good. Okay, and you should be able to turn on video, but
Yes, I can. There it is. Okay. I'm going to have to read this a lot.
okay, and
My
Ms. Bodie,
apologies.
excuse me, Julie, just a moment. Ms. Bodie has 5 minutes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm starting now. Julie Bodie, Ward 1, oversights in the official evaluation of the Nuclear Free Committee's performance, especially the declaration that has done nothing and consequent ordinance changes to be finally voted on this evening would benefit from clarification and correction even at this late date. My deep apologies for such a delay which has made these comments all but impossible until now and has resulted from debilitating illness. Anyway, I will be offering specifics of some of the public programs especially familiar to me, which were sponsored by the Nuclear Free Committee and enlisted the support of people with widely regarded knowledge for addressing racially and economically diverse audience. The first of these events was the Burmese Harp, directed by the renowned Connie Shikawa in 1956 and presented to a Tacoma Park audience in 2015. It's a beautiful film, and I'm not going to go into it, but you can look it up. It was followed by the launch of a film and discussion series entitled Nuclear Safety Problems and Possibilities Then and Now. The program consisted of 3 evenings of documentary films, including Paul Jacobs and the Nuclear Weapons Gang, with comments headed by Robert Alvarez from the Institute of Policy Studies and Saul Landau, who made the film. The second evening of the series included Deadly Deception, General Electric, Nuclear Weapons and Our Environment, with comments by Leo Slaggy, Deputy Director of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and Cindy Volkers, a radiation health specialist at Beyond Nuclear. It concluded a few weeks later with the return of Navajo Boy, followed by comments by Arjun Makhijani, president of the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research, and Linda Gunter, international specialist at Beyond Nuclear. We filled the auditorium with reruns of 2 popular films from the 1960s, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying, and Love the Bomb, with Alvarez as principal discussion, and the second was Silkwood with Meryl Streep and Sharon in the lead roles, my favorite. Kitty Tucker and Howard Cohn were on the panel which followed. The film is based in good part of reporting of the then Rolling Stone reporter Howard Cohn, your neighbor, who published Who Killed Karen Silkwood. Kitty Tucker Esquire had been principally involved in the jury-rendered verdict of $10 million damages to be paid to the Silkwood estate, which is Silkwood's children. It was the largest amount of damages ever awarded in that case at the time. At the time of the program and to the end of her life, Kitty was a member of the Nuclear Free Committee, my friend. In 2017, the committee celebrated A.C. Byrd, the World War II veteran of atomic testing in the Marshall Islands, WPFW founder and longtime peace activist. We celebrated it with music by Lucy Murphy, testimonials from a long list that included lawyer Alan Gregory, Matt Carey, Vanessa Dickens, Rick Tingling Clemens, Joni Eisenberg, Kevin Martin, and Kitty Tucker, and the lovely biographical film A.C. Byrd by Ron Pinchback. Paul Gunter offered to provide refreshments as he had in past programs. When the Nuclear Free Committee became aware that Vincent Intondi, founder of the Montgomery College Institute for Race, Justice, and Civic Disengagement, taught nearby, we invited him to meet with us and then to join one of our public programs, which he did. I'm going to skip ahead to probably the last 2 presentations before the city closed. I think in the face of COVID fatalities, if I have that timing right. The Nuns, the Priest, and the Bombs, a very well received film with, I could read, no, I'm not going to read it, with comments by Ellen Barfield from the Berrigan chapter of Veterans for Peace. Joseph Cirincione, president of Plowshare Fund, the public grant-making foundation focused on nuclear weapons policy, and lawyer Alan Gregory, a peace activist who worked for 32 years with A.C. Byrd. We showed it a bunch of times, and I'm not going to go into that either. Our last film, The Beginning and End of Nuclear Weapons, with scheduled comments by Mark Elrich, Robert Alvarez, and Vincent Ntondi commemorated the ban on nuclear weapons. The ban continues to gather signatures. There are more than 71 signatures now, though not by the United States federal government itself, but by the city. Mayor Stewart endorsed the general effort by joining the International Mayors for Peace some years back, and then later by enrolling Tacoma Park as the first city to support the ban on nuclear weapons. The city, of course, the Nuclear Free Committee had a hand in enrolling the city in the ban, Paul Gunter in particular. In the past few years, the City Council has acknowledged the connection there can be between financial instruments and nuclear weapons. At least 2 times it has recommended divestment from any such use of city funds. Nevertheless, the issue remains in a kind of limbo. Hopefully, new management, I'm fooling around with words, will find mechanisms to remove the roadblocks and the general lack of urgency without further delay. Hopefully, and reconsidered relationship as the city committee, and as such, subject to the regulations of the new city ordinance, can be easily accommodated even now. What really do you have to lose? And how better to continue the possibility of working together on behalf of the nuclear-free society in this way. In this way, taking pride in what we've been able to accomplish rather than remaining in a denial that is based on a strange sense of shame. That ought to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bodie. No additional comments. Okay, so we're going to move on to general public comments this evening. Do we have any general public comments? And that is when you're able to comment on non-voting items. Come on down, Arthur. Give me 1 second. Let me get your mic going. There you go.
There we go. Arthur David Olson, Herbie Hancock Avenue, Ward 4. First of all, thanks to Robert DeSpirito for undertaking service to the city. The council can provide meaningful support to the new city manager. You've already given the city manager your wish list of new city efforts. But given the end of American Rescue Plan Act aid, the depletion of city reserves over the last few years, and inflation, what the city manager can really use is your cut list, a list of existing city efforts that are first to go if city finances require cuts to be made. I hope that the council will provide the list now rather than trying to sort out cuts in the few weeks between receiving the budget and voting on it. And the city manager can provide support to you and the public. I hope you'll ask the city manager for a budget that includes information on the full funding level for the city's equipment replacement reserve, even if the amount differs from the budgeted amount. Last year, the financial forecaster hired by the city stated that an annual addition in excess of $1 million was appropriate, far greater than the $550,000 budgeted this year. Absent larger additions, the reserve will be exhausted by 2030. The full funding level will set a meaningful goal for the council. Note that the full funding level is fairly readily calculated using the city's existing equipment replacement reserve spreadsheet. Finally, I hope that this year the proposed budget will be in its final adopted format, rather than following the recent practice of voting on a proposed budget in one format and then developing and posting an adopted budget in a different format. I hope that going forward, what the city's webpage shows as adopted is actually what the city council voted on. Failing that, I hope the council will add the late in the calendar year step of approving the budget in its adopted form, giving you and the public an opportunity to correct any errors that have been introduced, and making that adopted adjective on the website real. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other general public comments this evening? Okay, none virtually? Okay, we're going to move on to council comments. Councilmember Small, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin by stating a couple of things explicitly. I am currently sartorially attempting to make a protest. That protest includes a Sioux City Ghosts hat, which is a Negro League team, but the Negro League part of it isn't the most important part. It's the Jolly Roger on it. And wearing a keffiyeh. Got this in Gaza. As we sit here and we are talking about the need to consider peace as a city and the historical considering of peace. We also sit here and put me in yet another precarious position because my wife is Palestinian and I'm a political science major and I pay attention to these things. So for a couple of reasons, like institutionally, there's a historical pattern of this place, you know, popping off about national policy issues. We've done that. Never since I've been on the council. There's also a historical policy, apparently, of seeking peace for nuclear weapons. And that's cool. But I am more concerned about the need to articulate when we are doing things as a nation and we have no agency or fairness in the manner in which we apply our state policy. So historically, because we have big time actors in this place, when it's a thing that's of concern to them, they make these statements or they get their council people to make these statements or they send letters to their council people. All of those things have happened. We have done nothing. When we have these meetings and we go through the kabuki theater of having people come in here with a presentation where we get the information kind of coterminously and they just are gonna lie, good order dictates that for some reason I don't get to ask any questions. Good order dictates that when we send emails around in this place and ask questions about why we do things the way that we do them, I don't get answers to those things either. And so I would like to be explicit in saying that I am making a protest as an elected official by wearing a keffiyeh and a Jolly Roger about the policies of the United States and the actors that I know live here that aren't saying anything. Also, I would really like it if we were to have some sort of procedural order and actual efficacy with regard to when you ask a question and the negative inertia of the layers and layers of non-answers or bad answers that we get. Because the point of getting elected, particularly if you have a quasi-mandate because you know, credentials and you like leaned on that as your thing. These people come up and ask you why you aren't doing these things, and it's not democratic to not have an answer. And I don't care about the perceived need for consensus at this body. As we move forward into the future, I would like to thank humbly and honorably the men who served in their capacity in this organization as they attempted to wrest some sort of normality from this organization. And I charge you all, and I don't care who it is that thinks that I am talking to them, to apply their better angels to the clear
hypocrisies about the way we do things here, because the kids get confused. And I was once a kid who moved here under the grand vision that this place was liberal and forward thinking.
Thank you, Councilmember Small. I just want to remind my colleagues, it's 9:21 and we haven't voted on a thing. So if everyone can please stick to your 3 minutes. Councilmember Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind folks, as most people know that are listening and in the audience, that we have a hearing, a county hearing on the minor master plan tomorrow, Piney Branch, at the middle school, rather. We recently received a climate assessment, and that a pretty thick document that is worth looking at, suggesting that there's an potential increase of 78% increase in greenhouse gases with regard to the minor master plan. We still have not received the equity report that we were promised by the planning board. In any case, I appreciate what the residents through the months have done to share their testimony and their thinking, and I expect that they'll be there, or I hope to see and hear many of you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. Councilmember Siemens.
Thank you, Mayor, and I may run over, but I'll try to get going here. Just a couple things I wanted to talk about. One is, yesterday I had the pleasure of riding with the tour with the county council members and some of the planning board staff to tour the area of the minor master plan. I thought it was very informative for the council members at the county, and I look forward to the hearings that they have in this coming up, and look forward for their support. I also had the pleasure last week of attending the Maple Avenue Connectivity public meeting for that project, and included a presentation of the preliminary design. There were a few residents there, and I've heard from other residents. I think it was kind of borne out by what what staff said during the presentation, that it's a pretty well received project, but there are some questions about the parking. Concerns are that there are a number of parking spaces that will be eliminated along Maple Avenue, and we're talking about a section that runs from Sligo Creek on clear up to the district line at Carroll Avenue. Or East, what is it, Carroll or Eastern at that point? Anyways, I would just like to encourage staff and my colleagues to have staff do a more than just the assessment that they've already done with a kind of a homegrown analysis of the parking in our neighborhood. But I think that because of the potential impact on not just residents along the densely populated lower Maple Avenue, and also the homeowners along Upper Maple Avenue, but also the stores, where it appeared on the plan that all of the parking in front of the stores on Maple Avenue right at Sherman Avenue had been eliminated. Now, the parking analysis that staff has done, I think they did a good job, but it was, I don't think, as scientific as what might be necessary. And I think a low cost way to really evaluate this is for city staff to set a period of time that overlaps when school is in session and when school is out of session, and barricade the parking that's going to be removed when the project is done, so that we can really make an assessment of what the impact is going to be on the community with those parking spaces removed. And I'm I think it's obviously would take some coordination with the apartment management. It would take coordination with the store owners. It would take a coordination with the residents, especially on up Maple Avenue up towards the DC line. But it would give a real good assessment of whether it's something that we want to do with concrete to make it to remove those parking spaces. I fully support putting in bike lanes to provide for safe transportation for bicycle riders, and also to do what we can to improve pedestrian safety along Maple Avenue. But I think that it's foolhardy to implement the removal of parking spaces without really having a good appreciation for what the impact on the community is going to be. And it's a whole lot cheaper now to make that assessment than it would be to find out that we'd made a mistake, that we had to pay for putting things in and then remove them later. In the interest of time, I'll switch over to my one other topic that I wanted to mention. This is an event that's coming up this Saturday, Saturday, January 27th. It's a surprise motivational speaker who will be providing a program for teens, and also there will be a separate session for parents to inspire and motivate teens to achieve their goals, identify main challenges that they may face, and give them good direction in their lives. There will be light snacks and some beverages for people. The event is at Hefner Park, right up at 42 Oswego Avenue. It's Saturday, January 27th, and it runs from 2:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. If anyone has any questions, they can contact Enku, who lives here on Maple Avenue. She speaks Amharic and English. Her number is 240-619-0841. And of course, if anybody has questions and loses the contact information, they can contact me, and you can figure out how to get a hold of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Fulcher.
Thank you. I also attended the Maple Avenue Connectivity Project and really encouraged residents to reach out through the website to give staff feedback. I was really impressed with the consultants. They seemed to intimately know the intersections along Maple Avenue, and so I really appreciated that. And I enjoyed, there was a young, probably 9 or 10-year-old who attended, and she was very savvy when it came to bicycling around Tacoma Park. And I appreciated watching staff and the consultants interact with her and really take her concerns seriously. And I also appreciated that there were some critics that showed up, and it seemed like they were being heard as well. And so I appreciate, if this is a project that you're not happy with, like, please still reach out and let us know what we can do to make it better. I will also be at the MMPA meeting tomorrow night, so I'll see everybody there. I want to ask people if you have a business that might be able to host Montgomery County Public School students for the Summer Rise program, right now is the time to sign up for that. Summer Rise is not quite an internship. It's kind of like, a junior internship for high school students. It's a 6-week program. I was not available for 6 weeks. I was available for 4 weeks. It's more about the number of hours that you need to help that student, sort of shadow you in the workplace. I met a jewelry maker in Silver Spring that was hosting somebody. There's lots of other organizations in Montgomery County that are hosting students. And so if you have an inkling that you think that what you're doing might be interesting to an MCPS student, you should go ahead and reach out and let the RISE program turn you down. Don't in your mind decide that what you're doing isn't interesting enough for an MCPS student to shadow you. And then also on Saturday is Tommy Raskin's Kindness Day. It'll be over here at Piney Branch, and I will be there making gratitude cards and decorating bags that an organization called Because We Love You Meals does some meal service delivery for food insecure people in the DC area. And so please stop by and enjoy some art with me. I know that Councilmember Siemens does a lot of stuff throughout our community, and him and his wife always seem pretty happy. So I think that if you come and participate in some of the Kindness Day, that you will probably have a better weekend for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. I'm just going to do a quick check for Councilmember DeBala because I can't see hands right now. Okay,
Yes,
there you
I'm
go.
here, and I thought I had a hand up. Thank
we
you.
can't hear
So,
We can
okay.
hear you now.
Great. So a couple of things quickly. Thank you for putting up with my virtual presence tonight in an effort to keep everybody healthy. So in addition to the testimony on the Senate bill for low-income property tax credits, I also wrote testimony on the county property tax credits bill that went in for their hearing on Tuesday. If anybody wants a copy, let me know. Secondly, we had a meeting on Saturday with 10 neighbors and 3 representatives of Grace Methodist Church, plus a representative of the developer, to talk about the proposed senior housing that would go on the Grace Methodist property. There is no revised plan, but it was described to us, and the residents identified 4 categories of concern that they have that they want to see worked out. So I thought it was a pretty productive meeting, but there is no estimated date yet for an official filing to the county. And last, today was the Council of Governments Climate and Energy Policy Committee meeting, and we outlined our priorities for this coming year, 3 of which directly affect the city: an EV charging implementation strategy, a solar procurement summit, and plans for grants through the EPA climate pollution reduction grants. And I was happy to discover when the meeting was over that our sustainability manager was already all over this last one. So that's it for me, and thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember DeBala. So it's been a busy week. First, I want to give a special shout out to our Public Works and our police department and everyone that was working extra hard during the snow. I know now that it's melted, it feels like it was ages ago. It was just just a few days ago and over the weekend. So I want to thank all of the folks that were working really hard to keep us safe on the roads. Also want to thank everyone that came out and gave comments tonight. I appreciate members of the Nuclear Free Committee and have reached out to our city staff about ways to incorporate aspects of some of the financial updates to some of our current budgeting updates. So things like our financial reports and things like that to provide updates on our compliance with those aspects of the code. The big thing this weekend, I was at the Mayor's Innovation Project, which was a great opportunity for me to learn from a lot of other mayors and some of the approaches that they're taking to tackle a lot of the hard issues that we're facing as a city. So that was this weekend. Thank you to Councilmember Siemens for attending the tour. It had gotten rescheduled because of the snow, so I'm glad that Councilmember Siemens was available. And I will also be at Kindness Day this weekend. I'm going to be floating around partaking of all of the kindness and giving a little myself, but definitely look forward to seeing folks at the event. Lastly, and before I turn things over to our new city manager, Robert DeSpirito, I want to first welcome you again. Comes to us from Rockville, but with years of experience. So we're super excited to have you. And I can't echo again my appreciation for David and Andrew, who's just been batting 100 through this entire time, and so grateful for you all. But we will have a welcome reception for Mr. DeSpirito on next Wednesday at 6:30. So if you are interested in coming and partaking of a few snacks before our city council meeting and meeting the city manager, please come out next Wednesday. So with that, I will turn things over to our city manager to provide city manager comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. Thank you for the kindness of having a reception. I'm most excited about meeting some additional folks that I haven't had a chance to do in these first 3 days. I'm very excited about and appreciate the opportunity to serve this community of Takoma Park, working closely with and supporting this visionary mayor and council and its talented employees. These first 3 days have been a whirlwind, and I've met many very impressive people. I too want to thank David Eubanks and Andrew Boldock for their tremendous contribution for stepping up and managing the city this past year. I look forward to working with both of you gentlemen. To the residents, businesses, civic and nonprofit organizations in Takoma Park, I will say that I really look forward to getting out into the community to meet and listen to you. I'm also anxious to meet and support our wonderful volunteer boards, commissions, and committees who contribute so much personal time and effort to assisting this community. My city phone number is area code 301-891-7229. Again, that's 301-891-7229. I invite anyone to call me if you'd like to share your thoughts and ideas, or make an appointment to meet in person, either in my office or out in a neighborhood, or to just get acquainted. I welcome that and would enjoy the opportunity very much. There's much I can learn from you, and I will always try to help you. I also have always worked to establish and nurture partnerships with resident groups, nonprofits, schools, churches, and the business community, since we are stronger together than alone. I really enjoy forging these relationships. I'm quite blessed in that I had a long and very productive tenure in Rockville, building and supporting excellent staff teams, as I did in 2 other cities that I managed prior to that. I plan to bring to Takoma Park what I've learned in my 28 years as a city manager in those 3 cities, in 3 different states, serving under the good guidance of 37 elected officials during that period of time. All of these cities have been progressive, dynamic, and very caring communities, and Takoma Park certainly fits that description. Having worked as a city manager in Montgomery County for 7 years, I believe I am able to draw on my knowledge of and relationships with officials in both the county and the state of Maryland. I was very attracted to the goals and priorities established by the mayor and council to address the challenges that we face here and to improve the quality of life here. I look forward to working hard with everybody to help achieve these aspirations and leading my team to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of this government organization to better serve the people. Now, if you indulge me, some news from a few of our city departments. From our Housing and Community Development Department, tomorrow, Thursday, January 25th, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Takoma Park Middle School, the Montgomery County Council is holding the public hearing for the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. Please note registration to testify, as the mayor indicated earlier in the meeting, but for those who might not have heard, it did close today at 5 p.m., but the Montgomery Planning Climate Assessment for the plan is now available, and a link to it will be provided in tomorrow's city manager comments that will be posted. There are 2 virtual meetings that residents can register for. On January 30th at 6 p.m. is the Montgomery College Project Update Forum, Takoma Park/Silver Spring Campus, the Leggett Math and Science Building, and the library renovation. And on January 31st from 7 to 8:30 p.m. will be the New Hampshire Avenue Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, Quarter Advisory Committee meeting number 5. Links will be posted in tomorrow's comments as well. A reminder concerning the call for public art submissions. The Department of Housing and Community Development is seeking proposals for a sculptural installation outside the Tacoma Park Recreation Center. The sculpture should reflect a theme of welcome or crossroads. The call for artists will close on March 3rd, 2024. A link with more information will be posted with the comments tomorrow. Staff have reworked the Business Investment Grant, the BIG program, and plan to release a new grant program for small businesses, the Open for Business grant, on January 29th of this year. This new simplified program will make it easier for any business, either moving to or expanding in Tacoma Park, to receive assistance. The maximum grant award is $10,000, and funds are available on a first-come, first-served basis. A community meeting on January 18th included a presentation and group discussion about ways to make Maple Avenue safer and more comfortable for pedestrians, bike riders, and bus riders as part of the Maple Avenue Connectivity Project. The preliminary designs are viewable using the following. We will be posting a story map link tomorrow, also with the city manager's comments. Please share your feedback by February 2nd through the survey in the story map, or send written comments to the city's planner, Alex Friedman. Alex can be reached at alexanderf@tacomaparkmd.gov. From our police department, Tacoma Park Police are collecting new and gently used bath towels, beach towels, bathroom rugs, hand towels, washcloths, blankets, beds, toys, and unopened food to help the Montgomery County animal shelters. We will be collecting through Friday, February 2nd. Please bring your donations to the Tacoma Park Police Department lobby at 7500 Maple Avenue, and we will get them to the animal shelters. Note, for the safety of the animals, please, no fitted sheets, items with zippers or snaps, and or other fabrics with rips or frayed edges. Thank you for your generosity. The Community Police Academy is now accepting applications for its 12-week-long program geared towards helping community members better understand the work of the police department. Participation is free to residents, but limited to 25 participants. The application is due on Friday, February 16th. For more information, please access our page on the city website or use the link provided in tomorrow's posted city manager comments. And finally, from the city manager's office, each meeting in my report to you going forward, I would like to include employee highlights or shout-outs in order to spotlight some special employee accomplishments or to simply recognize our unsung heroes who are individual employees or employee work teams who are not normally singled out for the attention that they deserve. Today, I'll mention the Recreation Department would like to recognize the work of John Webster and Ron Hardy from the Police Department for working through the city's Winter Staff Appreciation Celebration by driving the bus to and from our buildings so that the staff didn't have to lose time looking for a parking space. The Police Department would like to recognize not only Ron Hardy, but also Detective Janelle Lane. In addition to her daily duties as a detective in our criminal investigation section, Detective Lane has volunteered to coach a youth basketball team in the city's Winter Basketball League. Detective Lane will be coaching a middle school grade boys team. Detective Lane played college basketball for the Lady Eagles of Copan State University. Detective Lane's willingness to step up and mentor our youth continues our department's dedication to relationship building, especially with our youth. Positive interactions between police and our youth helps foster an environment and culture of trust between our youth and our police department. The Housing and Community Development Department would like to thank our new grants coordinator, Patty Malin, for jumping feet first into assisting with the city's external grant funding and internal grant programs. In just over 1 month in this new position, Patty has successfully managed updated reporting and site visits for our Community Quality of Life grants. She's overseen quarterly reporting and new awards for the city's state DHCD grant awards and been instrumental in the development and release of as many as 3 new city-funded programs. Finally, I began my first day by meeting the city's refuse and recycling employees at the Public Works Center. Yes, it was 5:30 a.m. and 12 degrees, so it certainly reminded me of the difficult jobs and harsh working conditions that so many of our unsung employees experience every day as they serve our residents. I then went to meet some of our police department's night shift as they were returning from the street. Our officers are also working difficult hours in extreme weather to keep us safe. I am sure that we all salute these great city employees. They really care about this community. And thank you for indulging me with this report, Madam Mayor and City Council. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I want to echo my kudos to all of the staff that have been mentioned today. So I'm going to promise, I keep my promise that we're going to take a quick 10-minute break before we get into our voting sessions and work session for this evening. So we will reconvene at 9:57. All right, everybody, we're going to reconvene. I'm trying to make sure that. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to move into our voting session. The first item on the agenda is the second reading ordinance amending the city code to remove provisions regarding the nuclear-free committee. Does someone want to move?
I shall move.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. Any points of discussion? Okay. All right, Councilmember Gibson.
I was just wanted to thank, the representative and thank them for their excellent work over those years. And I do hope that we can carry on that torch, perhaps not as brightly, but carry it on.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. Councilmember DeBala.
Yes, echoing those thanks to all the residents who have served over the years, and noting that we did get a presentation from the city finance director last fall on the Sustainable Banking Task Force recommendations. So there is something fairly recent that that the council heard. If people want to get a reference to that, they can email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DeBala. And before the vote, I just want to echo Councilmember Gibson's appreciation for the Nuclear Free Committee. I think that it's one of the, being a nuclear-free city is one of the things that makes us great and progressive and innovative. And I think now is the time for us to implement and identify ways in which we can implement a number of the various recommendations that we've received from this committee over the years and institutionalize some of the work that we want to make sure that we're advancing. So again, I'm appreciative to the committee and definitely want folks to continue to reach out and educate and advocate. And definitely look forward to working with our staff as it pertains to implementing the various aspects of the code and reporting out in order to ensure that we're fulfilling all of our requirements as a nuclear-free city. All right, so with that, not seeing any more lights, would the clerk please call the roll?
There we go. Councilmember Fulcher?
Yes.
Councilmember DeBala?
Yes.
Councilmember Gibson?
Yes.
Councilmember Siemens?
Aye.
Councilmember Honzak?
Yes.
Councilmember Small?
Nay.
Mayor Searcy?
Aye. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. So this will move with one vote, one motion without discussion unless a council member requests removal of an individual discussion for consideration. Would someone like to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think I heard Councilmember Honzak first. All those in favor of the consent agenda, do we need to do a roll call?
Since Councilmember DeBala is online, I think it would
I
be
keep
better.
forgetting every time we have to do hybrid, we need to do a roll call. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Fulcher?
Yes.
Councilmember DeBala?
Yes.
Councilmember Gibson?
Yes.
Councilmember Siemens?
Aye.
Councilmember Honzak?
Yes.
Councilmember Small?
Aye.
Mayor Searcy?
Aye. Okay, we're going to move into our work session for this evening. So this evening we have a work session on video camera trailer memorandum of understanding with the Tacoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority. Just as a reminder, this will be a 10-minute presentation followed by a 10-minute Q&A. So I'm going to turn things over to our city manager as the officers approach the mic. I'm going to make sure have your mic on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are pleased to bring this work session, this discussion to Mayor and Council and the community with respect to donation of a Falcon 3100 video camera trailer to the City of Tacoma Park from the Tacoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority. And we have a presentation, and certainly we'll be happy to entertain comments and questions from the mayor and council, and ultimately your direction.
Thank you very much.
Evening, all. Captain Evans. Today, we're going to bring the proposal of MOU, collaborative effort with Tacoma Park Crossing Business District. And also with me today is Executive Director Javier Rivas, representing them today. He was very helpful in this collaborative effort. So what we're trying to do is bring a camera to the area, the business district. And it basically is a it benefits us multiple ways. And the fact is, as a deterrent, it captures information, it relays it to us, and it's going to give us the ability to see these things in real time. Basically, data collecting and being able to use this information for investigative purposes moving forward, or just informational purposes, like if we have problem areas, problem scenes, that we could go back and look at the footage and decide what's going on. This is basically something where the stakeholders really benefit from a resource that the police department is getting with no expense. It's been a great working with Mr. Rivas. Before him, I was working with Ms. Kayla. I don't want to mispronounce her last name right now, so I'm just going to say Ms. Kayla. And when she left, Mr. Rivas took over, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. Lieutenant Butler's been very helpful and instrumental in doing this policy. What it will help us is deter crime, one of the first things, and allow us to apprehend individuals as well. The total cost of this is $48,941.80, which the city will not have to pay for. We will, though, continue to pay a maintenance fee. The agreement will be $1,919, and that we will take over that payment yearly after the first year. So the first year is covered. So with the benefit of this camera is an investment in the city. It will help deter crime, it will help us solve crime, and we can always have this information for evidence through policies and going forward. So if we have to go to court, we will have this footage, we have this information, and we can use it in real time. And since Mr. Rivas is here today, I would like him to be able to introduce himself and show his face, because this will be the first time. It's his first meeting he's ever been to, so if you can come on up.
Hello, Javier.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a great honor to be here. It's my first time at the Tacoma Park City Council meeting and representing the Crossroads and our many businesses there. So I'm happy to be here, especially talking about the concern of security in the Crossroads. And just to be specific as well, I mean, I think this came from our constituents. This did not come from, the top down. This came from the board. It's something that came from the reserves of the Tacoma Langley Crossroads, and so it's to address the concerns from crimes. There's folks from jewelry stores, banks that have been hit recently. So I think it's this will be a great partnership and a great resource to make sure that we're deterring any criminal activity in the area. So, but yeah, happy to be here. I invite you all to come to the office and to any of the businesses in the Crossroads. I know we have a new city manager, but any of the council members here, please. I'm lonely in my office there.
That's what tell the story about the cowboy or about the combat boots and stuff like that. Go.
What is it?
The boots and the coffee and all that stuff.
My boots? What?
Yes, and like your total community commitment and whatnot.
I mean, being kind of working on the ground. Yeah, I mean, the Crossroads was my first beat. Doing work in economic development through the Latino Economic Development Center. That's where I was working before the Crossroads, specifically working on Purple Line, support for businesses.
Louder, Purple Line.
Purple Line. Yeah, that's definitely one of the priorities for me is reestablishing that partnership with the PLCC and the Purple Line transit partners, ensuring that there's minimization of impact. There's going to be impact, that's for sure, but yeah, please invite me again and we can talk more about the Crossroads and not, but we're here talking about the cameras, right? So yeah, happy that we've been able to work together with the police department they also provide off-duty security patrols during the weekends, and that's been a great help. So we want to continue, collaborating. So I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so was there more to the presentation, or I see lots of lights, so I want to see if council members have any questions or comments.
Well, I know you guys have the MOU. Am I correct? You have the documents. So
Mhm.
I'm ready for any questions you may have. If you need any more explanation, I'm here.
Great. Councilmember Siemens?
I just wanted to thank the Crossroads Business Association for doing this and, as you said, partnering with the community to try to address a problem that's concentrated in that area. And it's something I think all residents of Tacoma Park really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Small?
Thank you, you guys, and specifically, I did want to say a couple of things. After having just had the second annual crime and statistics meeting for Ward 6, which you guys were wonderful and candid participants, I wanted to say, particularly, that one of the things that is difficult about the representing Ward 6 is the vibrancy of the actual Crossroads development area and authority, and its actual necessity with regard to the people who live adjacent to that area. The fact that that area is in Tacoma Park has often been looked at or articulated as a burgeoning crime problem, and not as the actual economic engine of personal property revenue within the city. However, the actual lived patterns of the majority of residents are constructed. I appreciate the fact that the community and the board, of which I am an ex officio member, were able to work this out with the police department and their continued support in this area. Specifically, I just am happy about the fact that we brought a process to fruition that I know we began in December of last year, or a year before. And I appreciate the fact that you guys were stalwart in making sure that this happened. And so on behalf of the residents who do take an undue burden from the ancillary realities of socioeconomic injustice or poverty, that we thank you guys for working this out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Small. Councilmember Gibson?
Yes, well, congratulations, Senor Rivas. Very appreciate your work on this. And if I'm not mistaken, Chief Duvall mentioned that a similar camera was used over in Ward 3 on, I believe it was 4th Avenue, and that it was, I'm seeing some nods, and that, where there had been some crime and some gunshots previously, ever since that camera's been up, it's deterred that from happening. So I'm glad that it's now over in a different part, or not that same camera, but another camera's over the city. I was wondering about how easy is it to get the data? Is this something you could do remotely? Is there much maintenance involved? And then how long will be the duration of having this camera? Does it last for a dozen years or what?
Thank you for that question. It's a good question. We have a Verizon camera, Verizon ticket that the IT department, IT department is going to install. So we'll have it in real time, and we will also still capture that data so we can use it on different times. So it's a Verizon line. We already have an account with Verizon, so it's just going to be an addition to that. And so we will be able to access at any point in time, and we will have complete autonomy over the machine and equipment.
Remotely then?
Yes.
And just a question, how long is this video camera supposed to last? Does it have any kind of guarantee or something?
Well, the one we have, I could get you that number again.
I'm just kind of
we've
curious.
had it for a time. I mean, we've had our camera at least 6 years, at least 6 years or more.
Okay, good.
But I can get you that information.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump in and see any other lights. I can't see Councilmember DeBala. Councilmember DeBala, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Just thanks to Captain Evans and appreciation to Mr. Rivas. Glad to meet you. This sounds like a great idea.
Well, I want to echo my appreciation to Mr. Rivas. Welcome. I remember as a former Ward 6 council member working with Kaylee De La Puente on kind of coming up with this idea and trying to get buy-in and trying to do everything that we needed to do in order to get this moving forward. One thing that would be helpful for me to get a better understanding is about the footage, right? So there's often these questions about privacy, for individuals being filmed on a real-time way and who has access to that data and how does all of that work. Can you speak a little bit to, and I feel like I had gone through this before with the chief, but how, years ago when Kaylee and we were debating this issue, but how that data is being stored and kept and who has access to it in terms of the recordings?
Excellent question. Thank you, Mayor. For an agreement, it is controlled exclusively by us. So the donation, the police will run it, the city will run it, and it will be exclusively for us for evidentiary purposes, prosecute, and it will be something we hold and capture for criminal events or any other incidents that might arise, any problems or anything like that. So it's nothing that will be accessible to just regular individuals. It'll be something solely that we use for that purpose. So it's exclusively ours, and we'll capture it, and it's be through our IT. So it'll be encrypted that no one can just go in, just like we encrypt other things, to not give access.
And that was my question, and I've been walked through many times on how body cam footage is stored and maintained and how all of that works and how it's actually restricted even within the police department who has access to what. So this footage would it be treated in a similar fashion as we do our body cam footage and how it's stored and maintained?
So you basically
answer my own question.
You answered no question. So yes, it would. So the only way that you would get this footage is the same request you would do through any other body camera footage or any other footage that's owned by us.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Small?
I do think also that it would be worthwhile to somewhat redirect this into, you guys are operating 2 of these currently, right? There is one on 3rd and then there's one at the Walgreens. So this would be the 3rd one that we are operating in the city, or no?
We only have one that we operate, sir, that we have control of. And it currently is at 4th and Eastern.
Okay, so then the one that periodically appears at Walgreens.
That's theirs, Councilmember.
Is ours as well.
That's theirs.
That's
They own that independent.
So Walgreens owns their own independent one.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And so that effectively, this is really one of the only real and effective deterrents that people have, and it may actually be the surveillance capacity of it that makes people think that they're not going to run up in somebody's spot, right?
That's an excellent question. The one at Walgreens we can still utilize. We just don't have control of it. So the staff is very helpful in allowing us to go back there, but we have to go into their computer to capture the footage. Rather than this, it'll be solely that we control.
So that's a wonderful example of a public-private partnership, and I appreciate that from you guys.
All right, wonderful. Well, I don't see any other lights, and so I thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I am very excited to vote on this because I know this has been a long time coming, and a lot of folks have been working collaboratively. So we will be voting on this item, I believe, next week.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, that is our last item on the agenda. I want to just make a quick motion. Would someone like to move for us to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fulcher. Thank you very much, Gibson. Everybody have a good night.